with some slides included in your packets. I'm just going to kind of walk through those and kind of then talk about a proposed partnership with the Springdale Water Utilities on improvements to the Benton Farm lift station, as well as purchasing some capacity in the Puppy Creek Interceptor line. Right now, the city of Lowell is looking at constructing a new lift station to serve about 586 acres on the west side of Lowell. It would be about 240 acres of commercial and approximately 2,700 residential lots. As a part of that, we would put in a new force main that would connect to the Puppy Creek Interceptor right at the city limits between Springdale and Lowell, right there by the 612 bypass. And in our conversations with Rick Pulverini and Heath Ward, am I muted?
No.
Okay.
I got a sidebar here.
Okay. As a part of our conversations and meetings with Rick Pulverini and Heath Ward with Springdale Water, we come under the understanding that the Benton Farm lift station was going to be under capacity once this lift station, or this new proposed lift station, were to come online, and that improvements to that Benton Farm lift station and force main were going to be required. Also, as a part of that, we do know that in the original agreement between Springdale and Lowell on the Puppy Creek Interceptor line, there was a certain portion of that was allocated for Lowell, and the remainder of that was allocated for the city of Springdale. And in order for this lift station, the new proposed lift station, to come online, that reallocation would need to be redone, and that agreement between Springdale and Lowell would need to be updated with that additional capacity being purchased by the city of Lowell. In the conversations that we did have with Rick and Heath, there is some extra capacity there that is available, and they have worked up what it would cost to construct that line in today's numbers and have presented that to Lowell, and that's kind of where we're at right now. Is we've got a kind of a cost agreement in place between, or a proposed cost agreement between Springdale Water and the city of Lowell to pay for those upgrades and to transfer some capacity on the Puppy Creek Interceptor line. Ultimately, the city of Lowell would be looking at adding approximately 2,000 gallons per minute additional to the Benton Farm lift station and to the Puppy Creek Interceptor line with this new proposed lift station to service the west part of Lowell. Without doing this work and without making these upgrades to the Benton Farm lift station or purchasing additional capacity in the Puppy Creek Interceptor, the city of Lowell would find themselves basically where they were at 15 or 20 years ago with this moratorium for development in place. And, you know, hindsight being 2020, Lowell wishes that they would have been a little more proactive, but we got a different administration now that is trying to think more forward than we did in the past. The good thing about what we're proposing to do is it will take 3 step systems offline that are currently online in the city of Lowell. You probably are familiar with the term step systems. That was what Bethel Heights was operating underneath of. And the mayor of Lowell is trying to get those offline and get those turned into to the treatment plant here in Springdale and get something that's a little more manageable and maintainable, and that would get about 300 homes off of step systems and onto more of a traditional sewer system. There's parts of it that would stay in place, but the treatment part of it would be transferred to the Springdale wastewater treatment plant as a part of these improvements. Trying to think if there's any other real highlights to get into. We've kind of talked about the Puppy Creek Interceptor and the need to purchase additional capacity. And I don't want to take away from Heath or Rick, but I do know that they conducted their own independent study with their own consultant, and that's kind of where the recommendations for the cost sharing came from and what capacity was left that needed to be done and what build outs need to be, or what improvements need to be done to the Benton Farm lift station and that force main. I will say that we are looking at this new lift station will cost approximately $5 million to construct. And I know we're looking at additional capacity and the upgrades to the Benton Farm Lift Station are running about a little over $5 million, maybe it's a hair under $5 million, depending on the which approach we take with it. And we are looking at trying to start construction probably this summer, late spring, early summer, and hopefully have it completed by the end of next year, 2023. So I would be happy to answer any questions, or I can step aside and let Springdale Water come up and add to it, or whatever the council would prefer.
You want to hear from Rick or Steve or Heath first
Yes, I would.
before you have questions?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Daniel.
Good evening. I think our role here tonight is the Springdale Water Utilities is not to be a foe nor an advocate on this, but just to address the facts of what's going on in Lowell. In this project that Daniel's talking about would benefit the citizens of Lowell in such a manner they would be able to get rid of some step systems. This is somewhat of a complex issue because there's a lot of intertwined things going on here. There's a capacity issue with Lowell. They're building a lift station to help improve their system, and then they're doing some cost sharing with us on the Benton Farm lift station that benefits both Lowell and Springdale. And basically in this whole thing, there's a benefit also to Springdale when you look at the benefits. And that benefit is that Lowell, if Lowell can get some capacity, then we have a partner in cost sharing on the Benton Farm lift station. If they do purchase this capacity and it comes back into the coffers of the Springdale Water and Sewer Commission, that purchase of that capacity would then offset, obviously, the cost of improvements, further offset the cost of improvements to Benton Farm, or that money could be utilized elsewhere in the system. I'll have Rick talk in more detail about the capacity, but essentially, Lowell and Springdale split up the capacity several years ago when that line was put in, and that line was upgraded to such a point that even if we develop everything that was there in Springdale, we would not use all the existing capacity. So there's capacity available. Now, 15, 20 years down the road, or prior to this, there's a lot of questions, and I think Daniel would agree, there's some decisions that were made, and we can't tell you why they were made, but they were made at the time. Maybe at the time it was forward-thinking decisions, but Springdale could develop all the property up there that's in Springdale that's able to be developed, and there would still be capacity left over. And so giving Lowell all or a portion of that capacity would not impact our ability to grow. And those are just the facts. If Lowell can purchase some of this capacity, once again, there's partnerships we can do that are related to this, but not specific to it, with Benton Farm. And then also, right now, we're looking at all kinds of ways to improve our cash flow, obviously. And there's some synergies here. But it is up to the council what direction we go. And I think we looked at 2 or 3 options, correct? So I'll let Rick talk about the study that we had our engineers, McClellan Consulting Engineers, perform for us and what their findings were. They're also the engineer of record on our Benton Farm project. So we had them do this as they were doing some other studies.
Essentially, Lowell purchased 24.1% of a 24-inch sewer line that goes from Lowell to the Benton Farm lift station. That line has a capacity of about 5,200 gallons a minute. When it was designed, we looked at parts of Springdale that would go in that line. And we sized it bigger than what was necessary at the time or what we envisioned. It's not uncommon to size something with a little bit of extra space in it so that you can grow in the future. Lowell currently has a capacity of about 1,260 gallons per minute of that 5,200. They asked to purchase another 2,000 gallons. The remainder in the line is about 2,600 plus 1,300 for Springdale. We've looked at the area, which is essentially along Wagon Wheel Road, north of Wagon Wheel Road, that area north of it, between Callahan Mountain, if you will. That area right there to the Lowell border, including some of that Brooks property. Some of that will go in the line, some of it wouldn't. But based on that, if you look at 1,300 gallons per minute, that's basically equivalent to the entire town of Lowell, several thousand people in a small area. Lowell originally wanted to buy all the capacity in that line, or all the remaining capacity in that line. And looking at it, in my opinion, supporting Springdale and to support the growth in Springdale, I would only allow them what they're asking for. That leaves an additional about 600 gallons per minute that can be retained for Springdale in the future. Don't think it'll ever be needed, but just in case you've got that capacity. If somebody wants to put some high water user up there or processing facility, that would allow that. I don't think that's the area you're gonna put one, but nonetheless, retain that capacity. It still gives you a bargaining chip for the future in case somebody else does need more capacity. In order to accommodate that capacity, as Heath mentioned, we're gonna have to perform upgrades to the Benton Farm lift station. That thing currently pumps about 3,900 gallons a minute. We're gonna have to increase the capacity up to about 9,000 gallons a minute and include an additional force main from that lift station to the wastewater treatment plant. Not only to take care of what's happening in Lowell, but to also take care of what's happening in Springdale. If you notice along 56th Street and 48th, as you go north of Bob Mills, there's a lot being proposed in that area, and there's going to be more in the future. The Water and Sewer Commission spent about $15 million expanding sewer to the west for the bypass that goes out there for the future. So those facilities need to be bolstered for that as well. This is all in our master planning. It's been looked at, it's been well known for years. The one wild card that exists with all of these cost figures that you're hearing is the environment that we're dealing with right now. You know, we got inflation, we've got, things are costing more, there's supply shortage issues, construction costs, we believe, are going to accelerate or increase in cost. So while we throw out these figures of Lowell providing about $5 million based on our current estimates, I think it really needs to be associated with whatever the costs are to accommodate that. Not just some number we pull out of the sky. It needs to be based on what really happens. We currently have engineers working on the design of the Benton Farm lift station and the force main. We've done route studies. We hope to be done with those designs sometime next summer so that we can bid this project and make these improvements. As you know, this is an amendment to an agreement that exists between Lowell and Springdale. So you're the body that has to take care of that. It would be my recommendation that any costs associated with this be established based on our bidding these improvements so that it's fair. You pay your percentage, they pay their percentage. As far as capacity at the plant, there is sufficient capacity. There are going to be upgrades in the future. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. This whole area is growing, and we have defined facilities to take care of it. So there will be upgrades, but can the plant handle it right now? Absolutely, without a problem. So in looking at this, I can certainly answer any technical questions with respect to it, and just hope to help you understand that this evening.
If I may, the Benton Farm lift station, so just for a little bit of background and history, Springdale built that.
Springdale built that thing, oh my word, I'm having trouble when that was, but probably about 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah,
Is it 20 years
Yeah,
ago?
it's
I've been here a long time, so.
It was fully ours when we built
It
it.
belongs to the city
And
of
it's still
Springdale.
fully ours. We
Correct.
just rent a capacity or,
There is no contractual, in my knowledge, there is no contractual capacity associated with the Benton Farm Lift Station. Only the lines that convey sewage to it.
was there anything in the contract stating about upgrades and would, like Lowell's portion, they would pay for upgrades on the
When those
lift
contracts were
station?
put together, there were certain, going back, I mean, we worked with Lowell for months trying to establish how we were gonna do this thing. And that was however many years ago that was. That was a number of years ago as well. Really, all that was contemplated at that time was the gravity line between Lowell and Springdale. There wasn't any association with the lift station or anything like that in the contract that I'm aware of.
The rest of the contract is really more about maintenance, upkeep, and ownership at that time, and based on the way it was financed. So that's pretty much the remainder of the contract was maintenance operations, and then the focus, like Rick said, was on, on who got the capacity and what part of that line. Really, the Benton lift station was not an integral part of that.
So with the upgrades, how much of that would be Springdale and how much of that would be Lowell?
The, Lowell is asking for 2,000 gallons per minute additional capacity. We're gonna take the pump station and go from about 4,000 to 9,000. So that's 5,000 gallons per minute additional capacity. They're gonna take 2/5 of that. They pay 2/5 of that cost.
Of
Just
the
that
upgrade
simple.
cost?
As
Why
far-
would we want to increase the capacity at the pump station? What's the benefit to us at the lift station? What's the benefit?
The benefit to Springdale of upgrading the capacity is basically you're at capacity now. With all the growth that is being proposed in that region, that will bring you up to capacity.
At the lift station you're talking about?
At the lift station and force main, they're an integral thing. So in our next planning process, that thing was gonna get upgraded anyway.
So that was already in the thinking, is that needed to be upgraded?
It was in our previous 19 master plan, 2009.
so we're doing the upgrade, the portion of the upgrade that Springdale would receive would be 3,000 gallons a minute. Is that, am I hearing that right?
Yeah.
Approximately?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
And that would cover all of our growth and then some.
Not forever, for some period of time.
Do you know about how long?
It's probably 10 or 15 years. If you think about it, that's probably 4,000 houses, 4,000 to 5,000 houses, additional, in that area.
So this will be new customers to the Springdale water system. So that's added.
That'll help finance the next improvements that are necessary to accommodate more growth. It's kind of how it,
And obviously, more volume is always helpful to your overhead, our operational overhead.
So you said 45,000 houses. Did you take into account like multifamily if we?
that'd be kind of like units, 4,000 to 5,000 units, that sort of thing.
What about commercial development in that area?
You know, commercial development occurs, if you talk about like, Speedy Mart or a Wendy's or a lawyer's office or something like that, their demands kind of occur at different times than residential development occurs. So it's kind of a balancing act. You know, most homes aren't doing much during the day, but, Wendy's and other places are. So I guess where I'm saying is that that would also accommodate commercial growth, not industrial growth, but commercial growth.
Can you, you're replacing, if this goes through, Lowell would be taking some step systems offline. I think you said 3.
Believe so.
Do you know how many homes that those are serving now? I'm trying to get a sense, Daniel, of what this would be replacing versus how much new growth, residential growth this would, or capacity this would give Lowell.
Yeah, it's gonna be slightly over 300 homes. It would be taking off of step systems and hooking up to the sewer system for Springdale Water.
Okay? And using Rick's calculation of
5,000.
5,000 gallons would be between 3,000 gallons to Springdale
Right.
would be add capacity for 4,000 to 5,000 homes.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
as you add more, it kind of buffers it,
Okay,
you know.
Yeah,
It's
there,
a statistical thing.
I say, it's more of a complex equation than just,
Yeah.
you know,
it usually is.
yeah. Engineers, we never keep anything simple.
Yeah.
So Heath, this may be a question for you. On our timeline, I know you made a presentation not long ago, I believe. We talked about the west side of town and how there's, a real need for changes over there. And I didn't know, where does this fall on our list of priorities on getting things on that timeline?
This would fall in line with it. It's not necessarily exclusive of it, but it does intertwine or does affect it to some point. You got really 3 big moving parts here that we're going to have to get done soon. The wastewater plant improvements that I've talked to the council about regarding ARPA funding and what we were trying to do. The water system, we're going to have to improve on the west side of town, which we also discussed. And then the other big one is adding another huge trunk line. You know, when you drive down Silent Grove Road and see the 2 pipes, we need to put a 3rd pipe there. And that's the other big thing that's got to happen. So those things have to happen in the big picture, but this is kind of one of those things that complements that as well. We're at the point we need to improve the lift station. It's out by Wagon, the one that looks like a barn a lot of people have seen. We need to improve that lift station at Benton Farm regardless. And we need to do the upgrades at the plant regardless. So those are all things that have to happen. So I would give that a very high priority for Springdale and for development in that part of town.
So in this May 2022 to December 2023, are any of those other things on the timeline, is that going to be needed, to be funded or started?
Those things are going to either go into, the water system is already in the engineering phase. The wastewater plant is at probably 100% plans now, 95% plans. It's effectively shovel-ready. The other piece of it I talked about, which was the 3rd main trunk line, we actually started doing the engineering on that, 5 years ago, 6 years ago? So that is in the pipeline and ready to go. So as far as the way these things will occur, I see breaking ground on the wastewater plant in this fiscal year sometime. I would see the next project probably going to bid in the next fiscal year, and you're probably looking at that 3rd thing happening in the 3rd or 4th year at some point. And simultaneously, while we're doing this, we have programmed in monies to be spent, and we are having the rate study done simultaneously to help identify our needs in the future. These are probably the 3 biggest projects we're going to need for the next 20 years of growth at least. So it's kind of like where we were around the year 2000 when we had to go out and finance some stuff, and we paid it off early, which is good. It's a positive thing for the public. But we're kind of at another one of those growth cycles again where we're going to have to do that. So the way we're looking at finance, we obviously have cash. We're going to go to those funds first. We are talk to bond people about financing, which financing would not be a problem for Springdale Water without a rate increase. We will be able to service a pretty good sum of debt. Back of the envelope was $150 million. I don't want to go borrow $150 million. You know, I said, 40 million with an option to repay the principal after 5 years would be nice, which is really what we're looking at. So, even if some ships, since you brought up finance, even if some ships don't come in, we have, because of our good credit and because of our stewardship, we do have options to get these things financed. But anything we can partner with the city on,
Sure.
such as Lowell, obviously frees up cash for us. And, 2 or 3 million here or there, I'm one of those people that every drop adds up to a bucket. And, all of a sudden, you might have $10 million you can really use somewhere else.
Well, it
And-
sounds like you're saying that, and don't let me put words in your mouth, but if let's say Lowell wasn't needing anything, and they weren't in the picture at all, and we need to do upgrades to that lift station for our area, right, for our capacity in the future. Would we do 5,000? I mean, would we spend this much, or would it be a little less, or how would that work?
Well, you got a base cost there, and so by adding the three, it's kind of like putting in a sewer pipe. The most expensive part of it's digging the hole.
So there's not you wouldn't see a substantial difference between upgrading it to 300, what is it, 3,000 gallons
You'd
a
have
minute versus
additional
5?
pumps you'd have to
Okay.
purchase. Yes, there would be some cost, but it will still be very
And
expensive.
they're handling the cost of their shares, so we're really coming out better.
If you look at our
Also.
estimate.
Go ahead.
I'm so sorry to interrupt.
No, no, no,
But if you look at our estimates right now, the work we need to do to the Benton Farm lift station is about 6.1 million. That includes force main and the pump upgrades. Pump upgrades are not as much as the line work. But nonetheless, if we use our same estimates and apply that to Lowell, they'd have to pay us 4.4 million of that 6.1 million.
I
Otherwise.
thought you said 2/5 a while ago.
But otherwise, if they weren't involved, we would still upgrade it, and it maybe be about a million less without the pumps, because you still gotta build a force main.
Right, okay.
So you're,
That's
like,
not 250.
goes back to what he's saying, it does help. Jeff, does that not make sense?
Well, you said, I thought you said a while ago their share would be 2/5.
Correct.
Go to the mic, Rick. We got one on soon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you take, going from 4,000 to 9,000, that's 5,000. Of that, they want 2,000 of it. So you're right, that would be 2/5 of that. But when you look at it in the overall dollars of the project and the capacity in the force main as well as the pumps, there's additional capacity there for future. I understand your confusion.
Okay. So, I sure thought I heard Heath say a while ago that he was neither an advocate or an adversary. But it sounds to me like you're more of an advocate.
I am more saying that the ultimate decision is by this council. And I'm like Rick, I would not give away the farm, the entire capacity to Lowell. It'd be in Springdale's interest to keep some of that capacity. I'm just saying that I think the benefits outweigh whatever the downside may be. So I think this would be a good move. That's entirely at the discretion of this council. I think it would benefit Springdale in a lot of ways.
I think it's always good. I mean, Northwest Arkansas is what it is because we cooperate well and can work things out. And if we're taking care of this is just me, but if we're taking care of our needs, then I don't think I'm really gonna have a problem with it. I mean, obviously, there will be situations in the future. We could be, it's gotta be said, we could be setting up situations in the future where we could be competing with Lowell for something, and because of the added capacity, they're able to get something away from us. But that's just, you know, we just compete all the time. So I don't think that's a real consideration that I would be concerned about.
I think we're all
Yeah.
interested in growing and, you know, we'd love to get something in our backyard, but you know, if it goes to our neighbor instead, it still doesn't hurt too bad.
That's right.
And I guess to Jeff's point, I probably should have said, I'm really not here to stump for Lowell. I'm really here stumping for Springdale. And, you know, Lowell can make their own case of why they think it would be a good idea. But I think it'd be beneficial to both cities. There are some concerns that have been voiced, and I think we've kind of addressed those, or I hope we have.
So,
What's the downside?
The downside is that, you know, they get the capacity, so, you know, they get to develop more land in their community.
That's the
And
downside.
some people may see that as a downside.
it's only a
Rather-
downside if it,
Yeah,
they develop something we wanted, you know, but that, who could know that? I mean, Yeah.
we don't.
yeah, we,
Just like you know, who would have guessed we'd have
Right.
3,000 houses on the east side of town
Yeah.
in the next couple of years?
I think it's always good to, if it, I mean, if it helps them and doesn't hurt us, then that probably ought to be our default, I think. But,
I know that was confusing earlier, and quite frankly, I was confused after I said it. And I want to be clear and correct. If you look at their option where they buy 2,000 gallons a minute, those cost figures I gave you included them paying for that upsize or capacity in the gravity sewer too. So if you look at that 4.4 million, of that, 2 million of it is for the Puppy Creek interceptor cost, and 2.4 million of it is for the lift station and force main upgrade cost. So there is that 2/5. Sorry about that.
I think my biggest thing is making sure that we're Springdale first and all these decisions, you know, if it's something that's gonna come back and bite us in 15 years and we're having the same issue we're having on the east side, I'm not near as willing to do that. Even, I wanna be a good neighbor and all that, but, you know, we're running into problems in our own city with capacity issues without other cities pumping into on us. So that's my biggest concern, is making sure that Springdale, we take care of our citizens first. I'm all about helping Lowell, but that's not who we're here to help. You know what I'm saying? The other thing, how do you know when their capacity's full? I mean, is there something that shuts you off at 2,000 a minute and says you can't send any more? And does that back up, or how's that work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have complex monitoring. Some of it's permanent monitoring, like if you drive by the cemetery, you see these funny-looking metal boxes near manholes with a solar panel on top. Those are our permanent flow monitors. So, and if we ran into a situation, Randall, where we knew they were at capacity, we'd impose a moratorium. And that should be in the contract, that if they do, they would accept a moratorium for us on any development if they ever reach that point. And
Who's writing this contract?
We'd probably end up writing it.
Okay.
And then presenting it to Lowell, and if they had a problem with it, we'd obviously do some negotiation. That's typically what we do. Typically, Mr. Harwell will take the contract, Rick or I, one of the two, depends on what part of it. It's the same with Tawny Town. We wrote in the language we wanted to be in there to protect Springdale, but yet to give Tawny Town some latitude on what they wanted to do. And then, you know, Charlie would wordsmith it and then run it by their city attorney, and then it would ultimately come to this council for approval. Well, Ernest, at some point, would review the contract also to make sure the city was protected. As far as, you know, we talk about the east side of town, which is a tough situation. If Sonora was incorporated, and we were in the same situation over there, I couldn't make the same recommendation I would on this thing. But we've been very, very conservative. We do not foresee Springdale needing all that capacity, but we would have it we'd have it for insurance. So that's kind of our insurance, the other 600 gallons a minute Rick talked about. We'd still have that in our pocket. And we don't foresee needing that, but it is there in case we do. So I think that's kind of our insurance policy that we've woven in there. Originally, they wanted all the capacity, but after giving it some thought and talking with each other, we thought, that's probably, even though we don't think we'll need it, it's probably not wise to give away the entire farm today for a few dollars, where we might spend 10 times that amount to get that capacity in the future. So those are kind of what I call the balances of helping our neighbor and then protecting ourselves.
So the other issues we're having are not connected at all to this particular, we're talking about.
No, and if
Completely different.
and if some developers went out today to the west side of town and wanted to build subdivisions all over, of course, 612 is not finished developed yet, but the day is coming. We've made about a $14 million bet that it's coming out there. We wouldn't be having that discussion at all, like we are on the east side of town. So every basin, every drainage basin, depending on the geography and the state of development in that area, highways have a lot to do with it too. Everyone's got its own personality, for lack of a better word. They're all very different.
Yeah, get to the mic, buddy. Thank
A
you.
lot of the facilities that were built in the southeast corner of town, those were temporary facilities that were put there very quickly to accommodate that growth that Terminelli was doing at that time. As a matter of fact, the Butterfield Lift Station, we call it the temporary Butterfield Lift Station, because it was just basically thrown in the ground just to get an area opened up. And that's what we're having trouble with right now is, paying for those improvements, getting them designed to accommodate the growth in that area.
So maybe I'm simplifying this too much. Help me out. On the page that, and you may not have this that we have in front of us, but it talks about the required downstream upgrades. This is Crafton Toll's document. And it talks about Lowell currently using 1,262 gallons per minute. And they want 1,987, so roughly,
2,000.
yeah. So roughly, if they got all that, they'd be using 3,100 gallons per minute roughly, approximately. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ultimately, yes.
But that's what they want. They want the ability to use 3,100 gallons per
The
minute capacity, yeah.
Correct.
That would leave us with 1,900.
Correct.
They need that much more than us?
You have to look at the area that it serves. Most of that area up there is the quarry.
Is what?
The quarry. Then if you go east of the bypass, it's essentially that area right there. That's a pretty small area. Also, whoever develops in that area is gonna have to punch under the bypass to get to the line on the west side of the bypass, to be able to even use that line. In my opinion, you're never gonna see it because they'll take that capacity due south to the plant. You're retaining capacity that probably will never be used unless someone punches a line under the bypass and develops a huge area just east of the quarry on the other side of the bypass. Where the truck place
So
is,
more than likely, if there's a development in Springdale west of the bypass, they won't even use this line.
probably,
That's what you're saying.
yes.
A different line would go straight to the,
We have other lines that are in that area. They're probably gonna tag those lines. I mean, that's just the way the land lays up there.
So if we grow out there and we do this, you're saying it's not gonna hurt us at all? It's not gonna hurt
I don't think so.
Springdale, citizens, growth, anything at all?
I don't think so. It's a 24-inch line that was put in out there.
Do you take this to your, commission?
It has gone to our commission. They've looked at this and they have agreed with the concept.
So you would come back at some point with a contract,
We need to bring you a contract amendment.
an amendment to the contract. That again would be based on a percentage of the total cost of the actual build, not
That
Not
would
a-
be my
not a dollar
opinion.
amount.
That would be my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, we base it on percentage, and most of what's in that contract is based on percentages instead of fixed dollars or whatever. But we would have to do an amendment to it addressing this specific issue. And then obviously, we'd have to have Lowell City Attorney review it, our city attorney review it, and the commission's attorney review it.
So what we really need from the council right now is just conceptually, just what your commission did.
Correct,
I mean, in other words, we're not gonna buck up about the idea of this if
right.
y'all can move forward. Is
That's
that,
what we're looking for. We're not, one way or the other.
It's either,
Yeah.
and really, because at this point, beyond the concept, we're gonna have to invest more
right,
time and money in the development of the ideas.
So, I'm sorry,
any guidance?
I didn't understand, what, are we supposed to be doing something, or?
Well, I think, Springdale Water Utilities is just looking for some guidance about whether to spend money moving forward on this. If everyone's in agreement conceptually. you know,
Conceptually, based off the presentation, and I know our Springdale Water has, they're very good at forward thinking. And I think I would think that we would need to have them go ahead and continue on with this conception.
So where do we go with that, Ernest?
I think is that the feedback you were looking for?
That's really what we wanted, the feedback from the council. If there was overwhelming negative feedback, then, it might be go back to the drawing board or go to the House. If there's some openness to this or even some agreement that there's benefit.
Well,
To
I've
this.
been pressing you pretty hard for the downside, and I haven't really heard it yet.
Well, I guess the downside is the only one I talked about was that,
Yeah,
we can just shut these guys down and not do anything and take care of ourselves and
right.
go to the House. I'm sure
that's not gonna end well someday.
someday it may not end well. We still got things to work with Lowell on, like Apple Blossom Road and some other connector projects I know we're going on. So,
So Heath, I guess what my suggestion is that unless somebody wants to strongly voice opposition, we'll just say that you could take that as a acquiescence, or I don't know if that's a proper term, but
To move forward?
yeah.
we'll just move forward with Lowell and bring y'all back some more developed plans. In the meantime, I'll look for some more downsides. So, I try to be a little conservative. There's always a downside to anything, no matter how good you think it is. You might be able to travel to somewhere exotic, but the downside is your plane may quit working, so I try to be conservative in those things. But, there was a time at different times in the political history of this region that people were very isolationist. And I think over the years, we've developed more of an attitude that we need to work together as a region where we can without sacrificing our own ability to grow and protect our citizens.
We might, Ernest and I know in the past, we've tied some conditions to some things like this that we might want to run by you all at some point before as you work on the contract with Lowell.
Sure. And that's
Okay.
that's great. I mean, that's the pleasure of the council and the pleasure of the city. We're happy to do that. And I think as we go through this, we may run upon some more negative things. We also may see some other synergies to tie this to some other things that might benefit both cities.
Right.
That's all we have unless Mr. Ellis has something to add.
All right, okay.
Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. I'm sure Crafton and Tull appreciates it too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 3 has to do with the next committee meeting, Mayor, or is that
Yeah,
a holiday?
Well, it's Martin Luther King Day is the Monday that we would normally schedule committee meetings. City Hall will be closed that day. We've done it both ways. I think in 2020, we just booted it to Tuesday night, the committee meeting, but I don't know. I don't know when the
I'm sorry, you
Razorbacks
said
play
what
that
was the
Tuesday.
name?
Yeah, I was just
The
looking, they
17th,
do.
you say?
Hmm?
It's, what day are we looking at?
It would
South
be
Carolina.
2 weeks from tomorrow night if you moved it. Normally it would be 2 weeks from tonight,
The
which
8th
is
to the 18th.
Martin Luther King Day.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
With what?
The, Tuesday, bumping
Moving
it
it.
to Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm fine with Tuesday as well.
I'll be questionable.
It'll be it could be a pretty long committee meeting. I hope we've got several things ready for it. Don't know that there will be because we're waiting on some financial direction from DRS on some things and some other things like that. So it could be may or may not be a lengthy meeting. And I'm fine either way, so. Do what?
Well, it is a possibility, just leave it on Monday too. Whatever. You wouldn't be there on Monday?
Is
Okay.
Wednesday bad?
Wednesday's okay. If we get past Wednesday, it'll start putting us in a crunch to get things ready for, to get the agenda out on Friday for the council meeting. But I think Wednesday would be all right, wouldn't it, Colby? We've done that before.
Any objection to Wednesday?
That'd be the 19th. Huh?
That would
Yeah.
be
I think it'd be the 19th.
What, today's the
the,
3rd?
yes, 19th.
17th, 19th then.
Is that when you want to have the next committee meeting? You okay on that, down on that end, Randall? Mark? Okay.
Well, we can get done before church starts.
You can go to church and pray for us. Yeah. Okay.
So if we looked a week further than that, into the first week of, second week of February, because we're winding up with the first Monday and the second Tuesday back to back, day to day,
Yeah, normally what we'll do,
March as well.
probably what the council will want to do, what committee usually does in that case is you would have basically your first February committee meeting on the 31st of January. That keeps that a week because your second Tuesday's on the 8th. So usually that's what the council does.
Mayor, you'll be in Little Rock on that Wednesday night.
I will.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
No,
that's the
I
league conference.
actually, I will.
Yeah.
I'll be in Little Rock. Thank you, sir.
That's the league meeting, 19, 20, 25.
Well, that's a committee meeting. I mean, I could watch, but I'd rather
So
not.
the 19th off the table then?
Do what?
Is the 19th off the table then?
We're looking at either the 18th or the 19th, so just, whatever everybody wants to do. 18th?
I'm better on the 18th.
All right, okay.
Okay, so Tuesday, the 18th, right? Okay.
All right. What's the What is this piece of paper that was handed out?
Oh, Ernest, you wanna,
I just thought it'd be helpful to y'all and to the city attorney to have a clear understanding, because sometimes we run into procedural motion issues throughout the year, and I just thought it'd be a good idea to have a kind of a definitive list of what motions take precedence over other motions. We had one come up recently where a motion to table was made after a main motion was made. So this is just a little information sheet to show you, you know, we do a pretty good job of handling these, but we don't want to get get in trouble. So I just wanted to make sure everybody, anything that the main motion, as you see, is number 11. Any motion above that, 1 through 10, would take precedence over the main motion, such
So-
as a
So a motion to table
number
would
7. Or a motion to amend, number 9.
amend.
Some of these we've never used, but it's kind of an exhaustive list, but
so an example, let me just see if I'm thinking of this right. Sometimes if there's a motion on the table and we talk more and we want to amend that motion, sometimes we just go back to the person who made the motion and say,
Withdraw it.
would you be willing to or to amend your motion? But the proper way then, Ernest, would be for someone to make a motion to amend it,
correct, and then second and vote on it, although,
vote on the amendment.
correct, then you would vote on the main motion.
Okay.
Like I said, it's work, but, you know, I guess it's a good idea to have the technical aspects of it if we were to ever run into a problem. Like I say, y'all work really well together, so, knock on wood, we haven't had a problem with the procedural issues I'm aware of, but just wanted to make sure we stay between the ditches, so to speak. I know, like number 12 through 19, I don't know that we've ever used.
Yeah, what is a point of order? I've always heard of that, but what does that really mean?
You know, if you look at the last,
Okay, well, we don't know, won't hurt us.
the double asterisk where it talks about a lot of organizations such as you all really just use the main motion and the subsidiary motions, which is 4 through 10. Everything else is kind of handled on an informal basis, but
Mhm.
Okay,
it's for you.
all right, that's all we had, I think.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
See y'all. Take care.